So why have we made this our top story today? The fact is we are a parliamentary democracy, and the crucible of parliament democracy is the effective functioning of the legislature of this country. Remember, because of the coronavirus pandemic, the session has already been postponed. It's now scheduled to start on the 14th of September for just 17 days. Let me therefore raise the big questions this evening. The big questions: is parliamentary democracy in this country being undermined by the decision to axe question hour? Is the government running away from questions? Is parliament being reduced to a rubber stamp? Is a full-fledged session during parliament during COVID times a risky option in the first place? Joining me now is someone who is taking the lead in demanding that question hour be once again restored. Shashi Tharoor, the Congress's Lok Sabha MP, is joining me. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Tharoor. I know you've come from a very long meeting of the IT Standing Committee, of which you're chairperson, where you had a long discussion on the Facebook issue that stretched into hours. I believe you can't speak on that because of parliamentary propriety, but I want to ask you this. When the standing committees are functioning effectively, when there appears to be other conventions taking place, why are you so het up over question hour being axed, is what I want to ask. Why is it that you believe this is undermining democracy, as you tweeted this morning?
Well, I'll tell you why, Rajdeep. Very simply, Parliament is always dominated by the ruling party, except, of course, when it's a coalition, and therefore they have to make some accommodations other people's interests. But when you have a situation, as we have for the last 6 years, where the BJP has a majority by itself and can pretty much get its way on everything, what we find is that most debates in Parliament tend to be essentially exercises in futility. We place our views on record and are completely ignored when it comes to bills being passed. They have an automatic majority, and of course everything we say just goes in one ear of the BJP MPs and out the other. They have absolutely no obligation, and they have never, in fact, ever accepted a single opposition amendment, even a routine one, a non-political one. They just haven't. They essentially get their own way. The only time when the BJP, or the ruling party, the government, if you wish, is ever in any degree of discomfort is during question hour, when you can find ministers squirming, having to provide spontaneous, unrehearsed responses to tough probing questions asked by opposition MPs. That's why it's so important. And we've often found ministers at a loss with officials hastily scribbling notes for their answers and slipping them through the bearers in the parliament to give them to the ministers. But it's actually the one time which the opposition owns is the question hour. And if that's taken away, why? And what's the objective?
I'll tell you what the government is saying. The government is saying these are extraordinary times. This is time of pandemic. They are worried about the risks of an extended day of parliament on the health of members of parliament. Several VVIPs, chief ministers, have already fallen prey to coronavirus. They want a truncated session. In 4 hours, they're saying they can't accommodate question hour. You will have short duration discussions. You will have 0 hour. They're saying we're not running away from questions. We just feel question hour is something that during a pandemic may not be possible, an extended question hour. That's their argument. They're saying the opposition should not see this as a sign of curbing alternative views.
Rajdeep, they could have curbed anything else they want to. This is the thing that makes them most uncomfortable, and that's why they've curbed it. Remember something very clearly. In the normal parliament session, you have a 6-hour day, 5 days a week. That's 30 hours. In their current truncated coronavirus affected session, they have only 4 hours earmarked, but 7 days a week, which is 28 hours. So the only difference between a normal parliamentary week and what's happening here is 2 hours, between 30 and 28. Question hour is actually 5 hours they're knocking out of that 30-hour schedule in order to accommodate what? You know, the Parliament session is likely to be an exercise in ratifying what the government wants ratified. They've issued 11 ordinances during the lockdown period. They'll want those transformed into bills, which of course they can pass however unreasonable the bills may be and whatever the opposition might say. Similarly, they're entirely likely to bring up issues for discussion that don't involve a vote, that they don't have to actually respond to beyond, again, scripted official party lines. So where is the opportunity to actually engage in a direct probing of the government and force them to respond on specific questions? Question now, is that one time? That's the one thing they've chosen to act.
So you have said that Parliament has been reduced to a notice board, that this government is using the strongman cult, probably a reference to Prime Minister Modi, and the cloak of the pandemic to curb dissent. Are these, the government is saying, we have consulted the opposition before taking this decision. They claim they've done consultation and have tried to build a consensus. They just want the session to take place in COVID times. Do you really believe that Parliament today is a notice board? Is that what you're saying?
What it gets reduced to is the government comes and says, this is what we have done, now you better ratify it. Let's say the opposition stands up and objects to all these ordinances. They're going to be passed anyway. That's what I mean by notice board. It is an announcement of the government's intent. It is not anymore a legislation emerging from a reflective and thoughtful discussion. But apart from the notice board, it's also a rubber stamp because the government has this overwhelming majority and it issues a whip on every bill. So at no point is the government's wish ever challenged by its own MPs. What does that leave us with, Rajdeep? That leaves us with very little opportunity for exercising the deliberative function of Parliament. You talk about consultation with the opposition. The fact is that the opposition objected. I know for a fact that Congress objected, TMC objected, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary and Derek O'Brien when they were consulted. I don't know who else objected. But the government essentially uses consultation also as a way of delivering a message rather than of actually hearing a dissenting point of view.
So let me therefore ask you in conclusion, 30 seconds, issues like COVID, issues like China, issues like economy, will you raise them or not? Do you believe that these issues deserve full-fledged debates in this Parliament session?
Absolutely. COVID is essential, the mismanagement of COVID, the entire migrant workers crisis, the unemployment situation in the country at world record levels, the collapse, frankly, of the economy with a 29% loss of GDP, and the aggression by China. All of these are legitimate, necessary, essential subjects for Parliament to raise. How many will the government be willing to accommodate? We hope all. We hope they'll have the courage. They have the votes. We have the arguments. Let's at least hear the arguments before they push their way through with their votes.
Okay, let's leave it there. Shashi Tharoor joining me at the top of the news on this big day when we've just heard that question hour will be axed from the monsoon session of Parliament.
Thank you, Rajdeep.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.